The old house on Branford Lane was more than just bricks and mortar. It was a mausoleum of whispered secrets. For Naomi, it was a prison she had never truly escaped, even after a decade. The oppressive New Haven humidity clung to her skin as she parked her beat-up Civic, the familiar unsettling scent of damp earth and decaying wood wafting from the property. Her father, Marcus, had been gone for a week, and her phone calls had gone unanswered. This silence wasn't unusual, but the gnawing sensation in her gut told her something was wrong. She fumbled with the key, her hand trembling slightly. The lock clicked, a sound that echoed like a gunshot in the afternoon stillness. The house's interior was a time capsule of their broken life. Dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight cutting through the grimy windows, illuminating a world frozen in time. A worn leather armchair where Marcus would sit for hours, a half-finished jigsaw puzzle on the coffee table, and the faint, sweet, sour smell of his pipe tobacco. "Dad," she called out, her voice barely a whisper. The only response was the creak of the floorboards under her feet. Naomi's eyes scanned the room, landing on a small wooden box on the mantelpiece. She had never seen it before. It was intricately carved with interlocking patterns, a strange, almost hypnotic design that felt out of place among her father's simple, rustic belongings. As she reached for it, her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Don't open the box. Don't go to the cellar." A wave of cold fear washed over her. She knew who it was. The police had been tracking him for years, but he always vanished, a ghost in their system. The thought of him being so close, of knowing she was here, sent a shiver down her spine. The message was a warning, but also a challenge. It was a confirmation of her worst fears. He was still out there. Ignoring the warning, Naomi's curiosity, mixed with a desperate need for answers, took over. The box was light, but felt heavy with its secrets. Inside, she found a single tarnished silver locket. She recognized the locket. It belonged to her mother, a woman Naomi knew only through a faded photograph. Opening it, she found not a picture, but a small, folded piece of paper. The handwriting was her mother's. "He is a monster. He promised us a new life. He took everything. But there is another. Find her. She's the only one who can help you. He is coming back for me. Tell them what he did." The words were frantic, the ink smudged with what looked like tears. Naomi's heart hammered against her ribs. Her mother's death had been ruled a suicide, but Naomi had always felt something was off. This note, this confession from beyond the grave, confirmed her deepest suspicions. It wasn't just her, there were others. The Branford women mentioned in the note, a tragic chorus of victims, each with a child by him. And one of them had escaped the cellar. The message on her phone flashed in her mind again. Don't go to the cellar. The cellar, a place she had been forbidden from as a child. Its heavy, bolted door, a silent sentinel of her father's deepest secrets. It was a place of forbidden knowledge, a place where the truth was buried. The note, the locket, the warning, it all pointed to the darkness below. She descended the narrow, rickety stairs, the scent of mildew and damp earth growing stronger with each step. A single, bare light bulb illuminated the space, revealing a cluttered workshop. Tools hung neatly on a pegboard, cans of paint were stacked in a corner, and a workbench was covered in wood shavings. But it was what she saw in the corner that made her stomach turn. A single, iron-frame bed, stripped bare. Next to it, a small nightstand with a half-empty glass of water, and a child's drawing of a sun and a house. It was her drawing. She remembered drawing it, giving it to her mother. But she didn't remember being in this cellar. The memories were a black hole, a gaping void in her childhood that her father had always brushed off as a result of a childhood illness. A cold draft swept through the room, and Naomi's eyes darted to a small wooden crate under the workbench. The box was sealed with thick metallic tape. She knelt, her hands shaking, and peeled back the tape. Inside, a series of journals, each one meticulously numbered. The first one was titled, Journal of Anna, wife of Marcus, mother of Naomi. The terror was no longer a gnawing feeling. It was a living thing crawling up her throat. Her father wasn't just a monster. He was a collector of lives. He had stolen her memories, her mother's freedom, and the lives of other women. And now, he was coming back. She had to get out, to tell someone. But as she turned to leave, her foot caught on something. She looked down and saw a faint red stain on the concrete floor, leading to a small rusted padlock on the wall. A new terror, a new question, a new secret was waiting for her. The silence of the house was no longer a void, it was a scream waiting to happen. If you are enjoying this story, please subscribe to the channel to not miss the next chapters. We are just getting started, and the true horror is yet to be revealed. The scent of rust and decay clung to Naomi's clothes, a ghost of the cellar she had just escaped. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a drumbeat of pure terror. The sight of her own childhood drawing next to that empty bed was a memory ripped from a life she didn't know she had lived. The journals lay open on the worn concrete floor, a Pandora's box of her father's depravity. Her mind screamed for her to run, to leave this house and never look back. But the weight of her mother's words held her in place. He is a monster. There is another. Find her. She knelt, her knees scraping the cold floor, and picked up the first journal, the one titled Anna. The pages were filled with her mother's neat, elegant handwriting, now a testament to her descent into fear. Naomi's eyes scanned the first entry, dated a year before Naomi's own birth. August 14th, 1989. Marcus says he loves me. He says we'll build a family here, far away from the city's pollution and noise. He bought this old house on Branford Lane. It feels like a dream. He calls me his dove, his perfect Anna. He has a rule. The cellar is his space, his sanctuary for projects. Oh, I mustn't go down there. He says it's for my own good, to preserve the magic of our life upstairs. I believe him. Naomi's stomach twisted. He had been a predator from the start, a meticulous architect of control. She turned the pages, the entries growing shorter, more desperate. September 22nd, I saw him talking to a woman down the street, an older woman with tired eyes. She looked like she knew something about him, something sad. When he saw me, he rushed me back inside. He laughed and said she was just a neighbor, lonely. But I felt a chill. November 5th. He's different. He talks about legacy and the perfect lineage. He stares at me and then at the unborn child in my belly with an intensity that frightens me. I feel like a specimen, not a wife. The cellar door is now bolted from the outside. He says it's a safety precaution. But I hear sounds down there sometimes. Not him, but someone else. A faint cry. Naomi's breath hitched. A cry. Her mother wasn't the first. The realization was a punch to the gut. The other one wasn't a fellow victim. There were more. A lineage of suffering. The thought made her want to vomit. She couldn't stay here. She needed help, but who could she call? The police? What would she say? My dead father was a serial kidnapper and rapist, and I just found his collection of journals in his secret basement. They'd think she was insane, grief-stricken, or a hoax. Her father, Marcus, was a respected member of the community, a quiet, kind man on the surface. Her word against a ghost's carefully constructed legacy. Her phone buzzed again. The same number. You're still there. You're playing his game now. Don't trust anyone, especially not the police. The message was like a cold hand on her shoulder. He was close. He knew what she was doing. The warning made her paranoia a tangible presence in the room. He wasn't just a ghost. He was a living, breathing threat. And he had a purpose for her. He knew what she had found. He wanted her to find the other woman. But why? What was his endgame? She remembered the padlock on the wall, the faint red stain on the concrete leading to it. She went back to the workbench and found a pair of wire cutters. The old padlock snapped with a satisfying crack. Behind it, a small recess was carved into the wall. Inside, she found a plastic-wrapped bundle and a small, antique-looking key. The bundle contained a driver's license, a faded photograph, and a birth certificate. The name on the documents was Clara Henderson. The photo showed a young woman with defiant eyes and a small, scar-like mark on her left cheek. On the back, her mother had written, "The one who escaped. Branford 4, 1993. The birth certificate was for a child named Emily. It listed the father as unknown. But the date, the year, it all aligned with the journals. Naomi had a name and a mission. She had to find Clara. She had to leave the house. But as she started up the stairs, she heard a car pull into the driveway. Her blood ran cold. She flattened herself against the wall, listening. Footsteps on the porch. The front door creaked open. It wasn't the police. They would have announced themselves. It wasn't him. He wouldn't be so bold. A voice called out, "Hello? Marcus, is anyone home?" It was a woman's voice, soft and a little weary. Naomi froze, her hand on the banister. She couldn't be seen with the journals. Not yet. She couldn't risk the evidence being discovered by an innocent stranger. She tiptoed back into the cellar, her mind racing. She heard the footsteps moving through the house, getting closer to the cellar door. She needed to hide. She slid under a heavy wooden table, pulling a dusty canvas tarp over herself. The footsteps stopped right at the top of the stairs. The air thickened with her own fear. The faint sound of a key turning in the cellar door. She held her breath. The door opened and a sliver of light from upstairs cut through the darkness. "Marcus, I just came to check on you. The garden needs tending." It was a neighbor. Naomi heard the sound of the light switch being flicked, but the bulb didn't come on. "Oh, darn," the woman muttered. "Guess the bulb is out." She didn't come down. She stood at the top of the stairs for a moment, then the footsteps retreated. The cellar door closed, the lock clicking shut. Naomi lay there for what felt like an eternity, her heart still hammering. She was safe for now, but the close call was a terrifying reminder of how exposed she was. He was right, she couldn't trust anyone. This was a lonely path, a path carved by her mother and the other women. She had a name, Clara. She had a photograph. That was enough. She would find her. She would finish what her mother started. She would expose her father's horrifying legacy and find the truth buried beneath the surface of Branford Lane. She had to, for her mother, for the other women, and for herself. Naomi left the house under the cover of a humid, starless night, the journals and the small bundle of documents tucked securely in a backpack. The air outside was thick and still, a heavy blanket of silence that felt more menacing than any noise. The old house loomed behind her, a dark silhouette against the faintest hint of a moon. She didn't look back. She drove with a single burning purpose, to find Clara Henderson. The old photos and birth certificate were her only clues. She needed a lead. Her first thought was to go to the New Haven Police Department, but the mysterious text messages and the sheer unbelievability of her story made her hesitate. Marcus had been a master of appearances. She knew deep down that without hard, credible evidence, they would dismiss her. She needed to build her case, and the best way to do that was to find the one woman who had escaped. Naomi's search began with a trip to the New Haven Public Library. The library was a bastion of calm, its silence a welcome contrast to the screaming chaos in her mind. She found the public records section and began to sift through microfilm archives of old newspapers. She searched for Marcus Brand, her father's legal name, and for the address, Branford Lane. The task was tedious and frustrating. The microfilm was a blur of yellowed newsprint and grainy photos. She spent hours, her eyes burning, finding nothing but mundane articles about neighborhood block parties and local politics. Then, she changed her search to Clara Henderson and the year 1993, the date on the birth certificate. The search yielded a single, faded article from a small local paper. The headline read, "Local woman vanishes, leaves behind baby." The article described the disappearance of Clara Henderson, a young single mother from her Branford Lane apartment. The police ruled it a runaway mother case, the article stated, believing she had abandoned her child. A chill ran down Naomi's spine. Her father hadn't just held them captive. He had manipulated their disappearances, making their families and the authorities believe they were simply gone, leaving their lives behind. The article mentioned a key detail. Clara had worked as a cleaner at the local New Haven Historical Society. This was a lead. The society would have records and perhaps someone there would remember her. Naomi left the library, the sense of urgency growing. The morning light felt harsh and revealing. She felt watched, every car that passed seeming to slow down just a bit too much. Every stranger's glance feeling like a deliberate, knowing stare. The Historical Society was a small, brick building on a quiet side street. Inside it was a museum of the past, filled with old portraits, dusty books, and the scent of preservation. She spoke to the archivist, an elderly woman named Mrs. Albright with kind eyes and a mind like a steel trap. Naomi explained her purpose, feigning an interest in her own family history to not arouse suspicion. "Clara Henderson? Oh yes, I remember her," Mrs. Albright said, her voice a soft, paper-thin whisper. "Lovely girl. She was so bright, so full of spirit. She quit so suddenly, just walked in one day, said she had to leave. Didn't say why. I remember she was so afraid. She kept looking over her shoulder. Did she ever talk about her personal life?" Naomi asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Not much. She mentioned a man once, a new boyfriend. He was very controlling. Said he wanted to protect her. She showed me a picture of him once. He was very handsome in a stern way. He had a scar above his right eye." Naomi's blood ran cold. A scar. She had never seen a scar on her father. She had a mental picture of him as a quiet, soft-spoken man, not the possessive monster Mrs. Albright was describing. It was another layer of his deception. He was a chameleon, a master of 1,000 masks. Mrs. Albright noticed Naomi's pale face. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked. "Yes, fine. Do you remember his name?" Mrs. Albright shook her head. "No, just that he had a beautiful house on Branford Lane. That's all I remember. Oh, wait, there was something else. A phrase she used to say when she was scared. 'The wolf comes for the lamb.' She said it so often I asked her about it once. She just said it was a family joke, but her eyes were so sad when she said it." Naomi thanked her and left, her mind reeling. The wolf comes for the lamb. It was a macabre phrase, a predator's mantra. He didn't just target them, he stalked them. He saw himself as a hunter, and they were his prey. The thought made the hairs on her arms stand on end. She now had a name, a location, and a chilling phrase. She had to find Clara. She got back in her car, her hands slick with sweat on the steering wheel. She had to make a decision. The text messages, the fear of being watched, the danger she was in. It was all real. She couldn't keep doing this alone. She needed help. But who? She had no one she could trust. Her phone buzzed again, a new message from the unknown number. "She lives in a small town called Litchfield. Don't go there. He knows you're looking for her. You're playing right into his hands." The message confirmed her worst fear. The texts weren't just warnings. They were an invitation. Her father, or whoever was sending them, was leading her on a twisted treasure hunt. He was enjoying this. She had to go to Litchfield. It was a trap, but it was also the only way to find Clara and get the answers she so desperately needed. She put her foot on the gas and pointed the car towards the unknown. The old, familiar fear was still there, but now it was laced with a resolve she hadn't known she possessed. She was no longer just a victim of her past. She was a hunter of the truth. The drive to Litchfield was a blur of winding roads, dense forests, and an unnerving feeling of being followed. Every car that appeared in her rearview mirror felt like a black shadow, an extension of her father's watchful eye. The text message had confirmed her suspicions. This was all part of his twisted game. He wasn't just observing her, he was orchestrating her every move, leading her to Clara. But why? Was he setting her up to fail, or did he want a confrontation? The questions gnawed at her, fueling her anxiety and her resolve in equal measure. Litchfield was a picturesque New England town, a place of historical homes and quaint Main Street shops. It was a town that exuded peace and quiet, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside her. The address from the birth certificate led her to a small, unassuming house on the outskirts of town. It was a modest cottage with a well-kept garden, a single window framed by a porch swing. A woman with silver hair was tending to a rosebush, her back to Naomi's car. Could this be her? Naomi's heart hammered against her ribs. She was so close. She pulled over, her hands gripping the steering wheel. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the chirping of crickets and the distant sound of a lawn-mower. She took a deep breath, her mind racing with 100 different scenarios. What would she say? How would she convince a stranger to trust her with a story so unbelievable? As she stepped out of the car, the woman turned around. Her face was etched with the weariness of 1,000 storms, but her eyes, despite the years, held a flicker of the defiance Naomi had seen in the photograph. It was her, Clara Henderson. The small, crescent-shaped scar above her left cheek was a familiar mark. She froze, her hand hovering over a rose. Her eyes, wary and guarded, met Naomi's. "Can I help you?" Clara asked, her voice a low, gravelly whisper. Naomi took a tentative step forward. "Clara Henderson?" Clara's body stiffened, a flicker of panic in her eyes. "I think you have the wrong person." Naomi knew she had to be direct. "My name is Naomi Brand. My mother was Anna Brand. She knew you. She left a journal, a note." Naomi's voice trailed off, the words feeling clumsy and inadequate. Clara's face went white. She dropped the gardening trowel and it clattered to the ground. "Get away from me," she hissed, her voice filled with a desperate fear. "I don't know you. I don't know anyone named Anna." "She mentioned you in her journal," Naomi insisted, her own desperation rising. "She wrote about a man, a monster. She said you were the one who escaped the cellar." The words "the cellar" hit Clara like a physical blow. She staggered back, her hand flying to her mouth. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they were tears of pure, raw terror. "No, you're lying. He sent you, didn't he? He's still out there, after all this time." "No." "He didn't send me," Naomi pleaded, pulling the worn photograph of a young Clara from her backpack. "My mother wrote about you. I have the journals, the birth certificate for Emily. I have them." Clara's eyes, wide with panic, darted from Naomi's face to the photograph and then to the woods behind the cottage. Her fear wasn't of Naomi. It was of something else, something unseen, something waiting. She took a few steps back, her hands balled into fists. "Please, just leave, before he finds us." "Who?" Naomi asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Who are you talking about?" "The Watcher," Clara said, her voice trembling. "He's always watching. He finds his lambs, and he never lets them go. I was the lamb who ran. He's coming back." The words from the Historical Society, "The wolf comes for the lamb," echoed in Naomi's mind. It was all real. He was a predator, a stalker. He hadn't just held them captive. He had manipulated and terrified them even after they were gone. Clara's story was a living testament to his psychological cruelty. Naomi knew she couldn't give up. Not now. "I won't leave," Naomi said, her voice firm. "My mother died because of him. He made it look like a suicide. He did the same to others. You are the only one who can help me. I have his journals, his entire dark history, but I don't know the whole story. I need to know how you escaped. I need to know how to stop him." Clara hesitated, her gaze fixed on Naomi's face. She saw not a threat, but a reflection of her own younger self, a woman on the brink of an abyss, desperate for answers. The fear in Naomi's eyes mirrored the fear she had lived with for over 30 years. She saw the same defiance, the same burning need to fight back. Slowly, Clara's shoulders slumped. The defiance in her eyes gave way to a weary, resigned sadness. "Come inside," Clara said, her voice still a whisper, but it was a whisper of surrender. "But you have to promise me one thing. You can't tell anyone. Not a soul. He has eyes everywhere. And he's a lot closer than you think." Naomi nodded. a wave of relief washing over her. She had found her. She was no longer alone in this twisted nightmare. But as she followed Clara into the house, she felt the chilling truth of Clara's words. The wolf was always watching. He had led her right to the lamb. And now, she was in his sights too. Inside Clara's small cottage, the scent of lavender and old books replaced the oppressive humidity of the New Haven house. But the air was still thick with a tension that felt like a physical presence. Clara sat across from Naomi at a small wooden table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The fear that had been so evident in her eyes now seemed to have settled into a deep, bone-weary sadness. "He told me to call him Marcus," Clara began, her voice hoarse from years of silence. But that wasn't his name. He used so many names. He had a different life for every woman. He was a chameleon, a mirror. He became whatever you wanted him to be. For me, he was Mark, a kind, sensitive artist who loved the quiet life. He found me when I was a struggling young single mother, trying to make a life for me and my daughter, Emily. He was so charming. He promised us a new beginning. He said he would build us a home, a perfect, safe place, far away from the city. Naomi listened intently, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Her father's careful deception was not just for the outside world. It was a psychological weapon against his victims. "The cellar," Clara continued, her voice trembling. "It was his studio. He would disappear down there for hours. He told me it was where he kept his most personal creations. I heard things sometimes, crying, a woman's voice muffled and distant. I asked him about it once. He looked at me with those cold, empty eyes and said it was the wind playing tricks. He said I was hearing things because of the stress of motherhood. He gaslit me, made me question my own sanity." Clara's story was a mirror of Naomi's own mother's. The same lies, the same manipulation. The realization sent a cold shiver down Naomi's spine. Her father was a methodical monster, a collector of broken souls, and he used psychological torture to break them down before he even laid a hand on them. "I tried to leave," Clara said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "One day when he was gone, I packed a bag. But when I got to the front door, it was locked from the outside. I tried the windows. They were all sealed shut. He had me locked in a cage he had built so carefully. He would go out for hours, sometimes days, and leave me with food and water. I was his prisoner. He would come back and tell me how much he loved me, how he was protecting me from the dangerous world. He was an expert at making you feel like a fool for even questioning him." "How did you escape?" Naomi asked, her voice barely audible. "One day he came back with a new project. A woman with a small child. He brought them down to the cellar. He had another bed down there. I saw it. He didn't know I saw it. I had found a way to pry open a small part of the cellar door when he wasn't looking. I saw the look on her face, a look of pure terror. She was so young, so innocent. I knew then that he wasn't just a monster. He was a machine that consumed women and children. I had to do something." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I spent weeks planning. I found a loose board in the floor of the bedroom. I had to pry it open with my bare hands. He came back one day and brought her food, but he forgot to lock the door behind him. It was a mistake, a small, human error in his perfect, evil plan. He went back to the living room. I told Emily to be quiet. We slipped out the back door and ran. I ran so fast I didn't stop until I got to a bus station a few towns over. I left everything behind. I couldn't go to the police. He was so respected. He had contacts. He knew the right people. He would have convinced them I was crazy, that I had abandoned my daughter. I had to disappear." "What about your daughter?" Naomi asked, the words catching in her throat. "Emily? She's a grown woman now," Clara said, a faint smile gracing her lips. "She's a professor at the University of Massachusetts. She has her own life. She doesn't know about this. I told her we ran from an abusive father. I never told her the truth. I couldn't. It would have destroyed her." Naomi looked at the journal she had brought. Her mother's journal was just the beginning. There were others, waiting to be read. "My mother wrote that you were the one who escaped," Naomi said, her voice filled with a desperate sadness. "But she said there were others. The Branford women." "Yes," Clara said, a sigh escaping her lips. "He had a sick, twisted obsession with building a perfect family. He saw himself as a patriarch, a god. He didn't just want a wife. He wanted a lineage. He would find women who were alone, who were vulnerable, who were looking for a fresh start. He would build them up, then he would break them down. He was so meticulous, he kept records of everything." Naomi held up the journals. "These are them." He called them his biographies. He kept them in the cellar. He documented every woman, every child, every detail. A look of horror crossed Clara's face. "Oh my God. He left them for you. He wanted you to find them. He's been waiting for you to come home." The realization hit Naomi like a sledgehammer. Her father hadn't just been a monster. He was a showman. He wanted his legacy to be found, to be understood. He wasn't just a killer. He was an artist of manipulation, a storyteller of terror, and Naomi was his audience. He had been waiting for her to come home to the final act of his sick, twisted play. "What do we do?" Naomi asked, the fear in her voice now replaced with a burning anger. "We have the journals. We have the proof." Clara looked at the journals, a cold resolve settling in her eyes. "We read them. We find every name, every detail. He documented every victim, every location. He thought he was untouchable. He thought his secrets were safe. He never imagined that one of his lambs would find the courage to fight back. We will not let him win. We will expose him. We will find every one of his victims. He's been waiting for you, Naomi. He's been playing a game with you. It's time to play his game, but by our rules. The journals are his weapon, but they will be our shield. We will use his own words to bring him down." The small living room became a war room. The journals spread out on the coffee table like maps to a hidden treasure of human suffering. Clara and Naomi pored over the meticulously kept pages, the silence punctuated only by the rustle of paper and the occasional gasp of disbelief. The journals were not just a chronicle of his crimes. They were a blueprint of a deranged mind. Each entry was a chillingly clinical account of his projects, as he called them. He documented everything: the women's names, their physical descriptions, their vulnerabilities, their children's birth dates, and the twisted justifications he used for his actions. Naomi read the account of a woman named Sarah, a fragile artist who had lost her husband. Marcus, under the alias Stephen, had found her at a local art fair. He had preyed on her loneliness, her desire for a new life. He had promised her a safe haven to create her art. Then he had locked her in the house on Branford Lane, her art supplies meticulously laid out, a cruel mockery of her freedom. The entries detailed his psychological games, his careful manipulations to make her dependent on him, to make her believe her world outside was no longer safe. Clara, her hands trembling, turned the pages of a different journal. "He used their weaknesses against them," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "He found women who had no one, no family, no friends. He made them feel special, chosen. He would tell them they were the only ones who truly understood him, and they would believe him." They found entries for a woman named Lillian, a librarian who had recently moved to New Haven. Marcus had approached her at a book club, pretending to be a fellow book lover. He had charmed her with his intellect and his deep knowledge of literature. The journal entry for her detailed how he had used her love of reading to control her, giving her books that were subtly about confinement and control, all while telling her she was free to leave. He knew she wouldn't. He had broken her spirit. The most disturbing discovery was not just the names, but the pattern. He would find women, take them to the house, and impregnate them. Then he would wait until the children were born before he would dispose of the mothers, often staging a suicide or a disappearance. The children he would keep, indoctrinating them into his twisted vision of a perfect family. Naomi was the last child of a long line of victims. He called them his perfect lineage, Naomi said, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. He was building a family of his own blood, his own creation. He didn't want a family. He wanted a dynasty. Clara pointed to a passage in one of the journals. Look here. He talks about a new project. The date is recent, just a few months ago. Naomi's eyes widened. He's still doing it. He's not done. The text message flashed in her mind again. He knows you're looking for her. He had let her find Clara. He had let her find the journals. He was playing a game with her, a game of cat and mouse. But why? He's not just a monster, Clara said, her voice filled with a cold certainty. He's a storyteller. He wanted someone to find his story. He wanted an audience. And you, Naomi, are his audience. He left you the key, the location, the journals. He wants you to see the scope of his work. He's a psychopath, but he's a narcissist first. He wanted his legacy to be known. He's not just trying to escape. He's trying to get you to finish his story for him. He wants you to go to the police, to tell them everything, but he wants to be there when you do it. He wants to witness his own legacy being revealed. They continued to read, their anger and determination growing with every page. The journals contained a list of names, locations, and dates. It was a macabre registry of his victims, a horrifying record of a lifetime of crime. They found a pattern. Every few years, he would find a new project. He would move, change his name, and start over. But there was always a common thread. The house on Branford Lane. He would bring them there, and he would keep them in the cellar. The cellar was not just a prison. It was a psychological torture chamber. The padlock, Naomi said, remembering the small rusted lock in the cellar. What was that for? Clara's face went pale. The padlock, it was a secret. He would show it to us and tell us that it was a symbol of our shared secrets. He said it was where he kept the key to his freedom. He told us that if we ever tried to escape, he would use it to keep us locked in. It was a psychological trick, a threat. He never used it on me. I think it was more for him, a reminder that he was in control. Naomi shook her head. No, it's more than that. He left it for me. It's not just a symbol, it's a clue. They looked at the lock and the documents again, a new understanding dawning on them. The lock, the journals, the documents. They weren't just a record of his crimes. They were a roadmap, a map to all the women and children he had kidnapped. He had left them for her to find. He had led her to Clara. He was waiting. A cold dread settled over Naomi. He was playing a game, and she had just figured out the rules. She wasn't just a victim. She was a piece on his chessboard. But so was he. And with the journals in their hands, they had a chance to flip the board. They had to use his own weapon against him, to use his meticulous records to bring his entire house of cards tumbling down. They had to find the last of the Branford women, the ones who were still alive, still out there, unaware of the monster who had stolen their mothers' lives. Naomi and Clara spent the rest of the night poring over the journals, their fear replaced with a grim, determined focus. The sheer scale of Marcus's crimes was staggering. The journals were not just a collection of names and dates, they were an intricate tapestry of deception. He had created new identities for himself, complete with fake social security numbers, driver's licenses, and even credit history. He was a master of manipulation, his ability to blend in and disappear so perfect that he had remained undetected for decades. The unexplained phenomena in the journals were meticulously planned manipulations. A woman named Susan believed a ghost was moving things in her house. Marcus had been using hidden wires and strings to move objects, driving her to the brink of insanity before rescuing her and taking her away. Another woman, Emily, believed she had a stalker. Marcus had been leaving anonymous notes and making silent phone calls, creating a sense of fear that he would then exploit. He didn't just kidnap them, he made them believe they were losing their minds, Clara said, her voice filled with a chilling awe. He took away their sanity first. It was his way of making sure they wouldn't fight back. The journals revealed his chilling motive. He didn't want money or power. He wanted to be a god, a creator of a perfect, subservient family. He believed he was rescuing these women from a world he saw as corrupt and dangerous. He called his plan the Sanctuary Project. He wanted to build a legacy, a living monument to his twisted ideology. He saw himself not as a monster, but as a misunderstood genius. Naomi's phone buzzed. It was a new text from the same unknown number. "Your friend Clara is a liar. She's not who you think she is. She has her own secrets. Don't trust her." Naomi's hand froze. A seed of doubt, tiny and insidious, was planted in her mind. Was this part of his game? Was he trying to turn them against each other? Or was there a grain of truth to his words? She looked at Clara, who was staring at a photograph of a woman named Lily, a victim who had been found dead. Her death ruled a suicide. Clara's face was a mask of sorrow, and Naomi immediately pushed the doubt away. This was his last-ditch effort to stop them. He couldn't kill them now. He would expose himself. He had to break them from the inside out. "He's trying to turn us against each other," Naomi said, showing Clara the text. "He's desperate." Clara's expression was a mix of sadness and resignation. "He always does this. He preys on your trust. He makes you doubt the people you rely on. It's his most powerful weapon." She looked at Naomi. "I'm not a liar, but I have my secrets. We all do, from what he put us through. But the truth is in the journals. He wrote it himself." They continued their search, and the journals gave them more than just names. They gave them locations. Marcus had kept meticulous records of where each woman and child had been taken. He had moved some of the children to different states, placing them in foster care or with unwitting relatives under fake identities. He had created a twisted, hidden network of victims across the country. The last entry was the most recent, dated a few weeks ago. It was a new journal, titled Project Genesis. The entry was short, but it sent a fresh wave of fear through Naomi. "She is a fragile lamb, and she needs a shepherd. I have found her in New Haven. My masterpiece is almost complete. My legacy is safe. I will bring her to the sanctuary and wait for Naomi. We will be a family once more." He had found another woman, and he was waiting. He had been so close this entire time. He wasn't in some distant state. He was still in New Haven, watching the house, watching her. The text messages weren't from a distance. They were from a man nearby, a man who was orchestrating a terrifying reunion. He had been planning this for years, waiting for the day she would come back to the house, waiting for her to find his masterpiece. "The padlock," Naomi said, her voice filled with a new terrifying clarity. "It wasn't a symbol. It was a key. It was a literal key. He left it for me to find." She pointed to a passage in her mother's journal, a passage they had missed. It was a small drawing of a lock, and next to it the words, "The key to his freedom is locked in his house. The key to our freedom is locked in the past. He left it for me to find," Naomi said, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and realization. "He wanted me to find the journals, to find you, to find the truth. He wants me to expose him. He wants me to bring his sanctuary project to light. He's a psychopath with a sick need for recognition. He wants the world to know what he did, to see him as a genius, not a monster." Clara stared at the drawing, a cold dread settling in her eyes. "He's not just a monster, Naomi. He's a performance artist. He's waiting for his final curtain call. He wants you to be the one to give him his due. He wants to be captured, but on his own terms. He wants to be seen as a creator, a god, not a criminal." The realization was a horrifying punch to the gut. The entire ordeal was not just a chase. It was a carefully choreographed spectacle. He had been playing with her, leading her along, waiting for the perfect moment for the final act. And that moment was now. If you are enjoying this story, please subscribe to the channel to not miss the next chapters. We are just getting started, and the true horror is yet to be revealed. The horrifying truth had crystallized, and with it came a chilling clarity. Marcus wasn't running. He was waiting. He wasn't hiding. He was watching. The journals, the documents, Clara, it was all a meticulously planned trap, a stage set for his grand finale. He wanted to be caught, but only after his legacy was fully revealed. Naomi and Clara were the unwitting stars of his final performance. "We have to call the police," Naomi said, her voice filled with a new, desperate urgency. "We have everything here, the journals, the names, the locations. We can prove it all." Clara shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "No, not yet. He's watching. He knows what we're doing. He's waiting for us to make a move. We have to be smarter. We have to use his own game against him." "What do you mean?" Naomi asked, her voice trembling. "He wants to be a god," Clara said, her voice a low, gravelly whisper. "He wants to be worshipped. He wants to be seen as a genius. We have to take that away from him. We have to expose his masterpiece before he has a chance to reveal it himself. We have to find this new woman, this fragile lamb, before he can move her." They flipped through the last journal, Project Genesis. The entry was a list of addresses in the New Haven area, all of them abandoned houses or isolated apartments. He was moving her, a game of psychological torture, keeping her in a state of constant fear and disorientation. They had to decipher his pattern. They looked at the dates of the entries and the times. He was moving her every few days, a methodical, terrifying routine. The last entry was for an old mill house on the outskirts of New Haven, a place notorious for being haunted and derelict. It was the perfect place to hide a victim in plain sight. Naomi's phone buzzed again, this time a message with a single, grainy photo. It was a picture of her, sitting at the table with Clara, the journals spread out between them. The photo was taken from outside, through the window. It was a picture of her and Clara, her face a blur, but the location was unmistakable. He wasn't just watching, he was inside their heads. A wave of cold dread washed over Naomi. "He's right there. He's outside." Clara's face was a mask of cold resolve. "He wants us to panic. He wants us to run. We won't. We'll play his game, but we'll play it better. He's counting on us to go straight to the mill house, to run right into his trap. We'll do the opposite. We'll go to a public place. We'll expose him on our own terms." They packed the journals and the documents, their hands moving with a grim, practiced speed. They got into Naomi's car, the engine rumbling to life in the dead of the night. Naomi drove, her eyes darting to the rearview mirror. A set of headlights appeared behind them, following at a distance. He was there. He was always there. Naomi drove not towards the mill house, but towards the center of New Haven, towards the local news station. It was their only hope. They had to get the journals to someone who would believe them, someone who would expose his entire legacy to the world. A cold rain began to fall, the drops streaking the windshield like tears. The city lights of New Haven glimmered in the distance, a beacon of hope in the storm. They reached the news station, a sterile, modern building of steel and glass. Naomi and Clara walked up to the front desk, the backpack with the journals a heavy weight on Naomi's shoulders. The security guard, a large, intimidating man, eyed them with suspicion. "We need to speak to a reporter," Naomi said, her voice shaky but firm. "We have a story, a very important story. It's about a man named Marcus Brand." The security guard looked at them, then at his phone. He received a text message. A subtle change came over his face, a flicker of recognition. He smiled, a cold, practiced smile. "He's been waiting for you, Ms. Brand. He's very particular about who he talks to. He's on his way. He wants to make sure his story is told accurately." A chill ran down Naomi's spine. Marcus had not just been watching. He had infiltrated their every move. He had contacts everywhere. He was a ghost in the system, a shadow that had been anticipating their every move. The security guard was one of his pawns. The thought was a physical blow. He wasn't just a monster. He was a god in his own mind, a meticulous architect of human suffering, with a network of people who would do his bidding. "We're not waiting," Naomi said, her voice filled with a new, burning anger. She grabbed Clara's hand and pulled her towards the back entrance. They had to run. They had to find another way. They were in his lair, and he was coming. As they ran, the security guard's voice boomed after them. "He's always watching, Ms. Brand. He knows where you're going." They ran out into the pouring rain, the news station now a cage, the city of New Haven a hunting ground. They had nowhere to go. He was everywhere. He had been a step ahead of them from the start. But Naomi had an idea, a desperate last-ditch plan. He wanted an audience. He wanted to be a genius. She would give him his audience, but she would expose him for the monster he was. She would tell the world his story, but on her own terms. She would not be his puppet. She would be his undoing. The pouring rain provided a temporary shield, a veil of grey that obscured their frantic escape. Naomi and Clara ran, their lungs burning, their steps splashing through puddles. The security guard's words echoed in Naomi's mind, a grim mantra of their helplessness. Marcus had woven a web so intricate, so vast, that it seemed to ensnare them at every turn. He hadn't just been a killer. He had been an orchestrator, a puppeteer, with a network of unwitting accomplices who believed his lies. "He's been watching me for years," Naomi gasped, her voice hoarse from running. "He used his charisma, his reputation. He manipulated everyone. He's not a ghost. He's a chameleon." Clara, her face a mask of weary determination, nodded. "He always finds a way to get people to trust him. It's his gift. He makes people feel like they're part of something special, something grand. He made me feel that way too. He made me believe I was the only one who truly understood him. We have to use that against him." They found refuge in a small, empty coffee shop. Its lights still on, but its doors locked. Naomi had an idea. It was a gamble, but it was their only chance. She pulled out her phone and started a live broadcast on a social media platform. The stream was shaky, the lighting poor, but it was live. She held the camera up, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and defiance. "My name is Naomi Brand," she began, her voice trembling at first, then growing stronger with every word. "And I have a story to tell. A story about a man who built a family out of lies and deception. A man who kidnapped, tortured, and murdered women. A man the world knows as Marcus Brand. My father." The comments started to pour in, a wave of disbelief and mockery. "This is a joke, right? She's crazy." Another one of those YouTube conspiracy theories. But she kept going. She told her story, her voice filled with a raw, emotional truth that couldn't be faked. She told them about the house on Branford Lane, the cellar, the journals, and the documents she had found. She told them about her mother, Anna, and the suicide that wasn't a suicide. She told them about Clara, the woman who had escaped, and the other Branford women who weren't so lucky. Clara, standing by her side, took the camera. "My name is Clara Henderson. I was one of his victims. I escaped. He told the world I ran away, that I abandoned my child. He used the system, his reputation, to make me disappear. But I'm here, and I'm not a ghost." She showed the camera the small crescent-shaped scar on her cheek, the one Marcus had given her as a reminder of her defiance. "He called me a liar. He wanted to destroy me. He's watching this right now, and he's furious. Because we are taking back our story." Suddenly, the screen went black. The feed was cut. They had been found. He was here. A voice, calm and measured, came from the back of the coffee shop. "You should have waited, Naomi. I wanted to tell the story myself. I wanted the world to see my work, my legacy. You've ruined it. You've cheapened it with your theatrics." Naomi and Clara turned around. Standing in the doorway, framed by the pouring rain, was a man with a stern, handsome face. It was Marcus. But it wasn't the kind, quiet man Naomi remembered. His eyes were cold and empty, a chilling mirror of the man described in the journals. He was holding a small device in his hand, a signal jammer. He had been watching the stream, waiting for his moment. "You're a monster," Naomi said, her voice filled with a venomous fury. "I am a creator," he replied, his voice devoid of emotion. "I built a new life for you, a better life. I saved you from the corruption of the world. I gave you a family, a perfect lineage. You should be thanking me." "You killed my mother," Naomi said, tears of rage and sorrow streaming down her face. "You made her believe she was going insane. You broke her. You broke all of them." "They were weak," he said, his voice flat. "They were imperfect. They were not worthy of my legacy. You, Naomi, you are different. You have my strength. You have my intellect. You were supposed to be the one to carry on my work. You were supposed to be my masterpiece." Clara stepped forward, her body trembling but her voice was steady. "You are not a creator. You are a parasite. You took what was not yours. You are not a god. You are a criminal. And your masterpiece is a lie." He looked at Clara, his face a mask of pure contempt. "You should have stayed gone. You are a mistake, a blemish on my perfect legacy." Suddenly a blinding flash of light filled the room. The coffee shop door burst open and a swarm of police officers rushed in, their guns drawn. They had seen the live feed. The shaky, emotional testimony had been enough. They had traced the stream. He had cut the power, but it was too late. The truth was out. Marcus's face, a mask of cold fury, crumpled in a moment of pure shock. He had underestimated them. He had underestimated the power of their truth. He had been so focused on his final performance, he hadn't considered that his audience would bring the curtain down themselves. He was not a god. He was a man caught in a web of his own lies. He was caught, not on his own terms, but on theirs. The following days were a blur of police interviews, media headlines, and a slow, creeping sense of relief. Marcus Brand, the quiet neighbor from Branford Lane, was now a national news story. The journals, meticulously preserved in police evidence bags, were the key to unlocking his decades-long reign of terror. The police found the new, fragile lamb, a young woman named Sarah, a few towns over, just as Naomi and Clara had deciphered from the journals. Sarah had been disoriented, terrified, and on the verge of a complete psychological breakdown, a living testament to Marcus's calculated cruelty. The story was a firestorm. The media, initially skeptical, became fixated on the horrifying details. Marcus's Sanctuary Project became a chilling case study in human depravity. His network of accomplices, the unsuspecting neighbors and security guards who had helped him, were brought in for questioning, their bewildered faces a testament to his master manipulation. He had used them without their knowledge, using his charm and his reputation as a respectable member of the community to get them to do his bidding. Naomi and Clara, once victims, were now hailed as heroes. They were asked to go on television to tell their story, but they both declined. They had told their truth. The world had seen it. They didn't need to perform for an audience. They needed to heal. The house on Branford Lane was a crime scene, swarming with forensics teams and investigators. The cellar, a place of unspeakable horrors, was now a cold, clinical space, its dark secrets exposed to the light. The iron bed, the half-finished jigsaw puzzle, the books, the tools, all of it was evidence. Naomi went back once, just to see it. It was no longer a mausoleum of secrets. It was a testament to her mother's strength and her own resilience. The air was no longer heavy with silence, it was filled with the sound of truth. The journey of healing was a long and difficult one. Naomi sought therapy, a process of slowly, painstakingly rebuilding the fragmented memories of her childhood. She learned to separate the Marcus Brand, the world knew, from the monster her father truly was. She learned to embrace her anger, to use it as a tool for change, not a weapon of self-destruction. Clara, for her part, reconnected with her daughter Emily. She told her the truth, every agonizing detail. Emily, a woman with a keen intellect and a deep love for her mother, listened with an open heart. She didn't see a victim. She saw a survivor. She saw a woman who had risked everything to save herself and her daughter. They began a new chapter, one built on a foundation of honesty and love. The other Branford women, those who had been found and those who had been lost, were no longer just names in a journal. They were human beings with stories, with lives. Naomi and Clara, armed with the journals, worked with a team of investigators to find the children who had been placed in foster care or with new families. The process was slow, but it was a beginning. A new lineage was being created, not one of fear and control, but one of hope and healing. Naomi's phone, once a source of terror, was now a simple device. She still had the text messages, a chilling reminder of his final game. But they no longer held power over her. He was in prison, a living ghost of the monster he was. He would be known to the world not as a creator, but as a criminal. His legacy was not one of genius, but one of failure. The last thing Naomi did was return to the house on Branford Lane. The police had cleared the house, and it stood empty, a shell of its former self. She walked into the living room, the sun shining through the dusty windows, illuminating a world that no longer held any secrets. The air was clean. The silence was not menacing. It was peaceful. She looked at the spot where the wooden box had been. She thought of her mother, of Clara, of the other women. They were not forgotten. Their voices, once muffled by fear, were now loud and clear. Their stories, once buried in a cellar, were now known to the world. She left the house, not as a victim, but as a survivor. The past was not forgotten, but it was no longer her prison. The wolf had been caught, and the lambs were finally free.